Well, we are kicking off our 2024-25 player reviews. Today, we'll tell you why Predators fans should not be worried about goaltending despite some alarming netminder stats.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our episode with a special shout out to our Locked On Predators insiders and to our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio and Friends. I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, Emma, we are kicking off our season reviews of the players. And look, friends, here's what's real. It was 84 years long. We all saw it. It was horrifying. So we're going to focus on an interesting stat for these players. We're also going to talk about what we need to see looking ahead. And today we are kicking it off talking about goaltenders. We're going to talk about some interesting opportunities for growth when it comes to Juuse Saros. And we're going to tell you how we see Justus Annunen and Juuse Saros fitting in long-term for the Nashville Predators. Emma, Juuse Saros. Juuse Saros. This was a player who, like many of his cohorts in that locker room, did not have the season that we expected. 58 games played, a 2.98 goals against average, an 896 save percentage. That is his worst for a season in which he played more than one game. He did have 4 shutouts against Boston, Utah, the New York Rangers, and Vancouver Canucks as well. So we saw some shutouts, but what we didn't see, I think, this season was prime Juuse Saros.
I think, though, too, what we saw from him, remember how it's, tale as old as time. We're always talking about Juuse Saros is a slow starter. He always starts slow. And this year, we actually saw him do very well early in the season while the rest of the team wasn't doing well. And we thought, oh, that's funny. It's the rest of the team that's having a slow start and Saros isn't. And then, come to realize that slow start lasted 84 years. But I think that, with goalies, this is not unique to Saros. I just think goalies, of course, they take a lot of the blame for a lot of things just because they are the last line of defense. They have to stop the puck. I get it. But at the end of the day, I know I've said this so many times, but if you look at this, like everything that went wrong for the Nashville Predators this season, were his numbers not the best? Yeah, no, they were actually some of the worst of his career, but he doesn't play in a vacuum. None of these guys plays in a vacuum. And so I think that a lot of it is, we talk about the chicken and egg thing where it's a little bit like, ooh, is this a result of the rest of the team performing so poorly? Or is he the reason that the rest of the team is performing so poorly? And for some reason, a lot of people seem to think the latter. And I don't understand that at all. Because for so many years, Juuse Saros has been the guy who has kept this team in games that they have no business still being in. He has kept them competitive. He, has stolen games for them. And he did that a couple times this year too. But for as much as he does that, it is amazing to me how quickly people choose to blame him as soon as something goes wrong. And it's like,
yeah,
what? So it's like, yeah, the numbers are the worst of his career, but look at the team playing in front of him. None of them are putting up career numbers either.
Yeah.
So,
Goaltending numbers, especially this year, you cannot look at them in a vacuum because that's not how they happen. Here's an interesting stat about UC Saros' season. He was tied for fourth when it comes to most goals allowed in the league. But here's what makes me feel better. You hear that stat and you're like, oh my gosh, UC Saros, he's no good. He's the problem. We've heard that. But here are the ones that allowed more goals: Jeremy Swayman, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Elvis Merzlikins, and Saros was tied with Igor Shesterkin. Do you know what I don't think? I don't think Jeremy Swayman is fake. I don't think Igor Shesterkin is crap. I think sometimes really good goaltenders have bad seasons. And part of that is what happens around them. And some part of that is on them as well. And I think it's very difficult to parcel out what is what. But here is what I'm saying: good goaltenders who win games for their team, goaltenders who carry a team in the postseason, sometimes they have really bad seasons. And while that stat is alarming, for me, the list that he's on is also like, you know what? Some of these guys, also had bad seasons. What is your concern level with Saros going forward? When you look at this Nashville Predators team and what we need to see from them next season, how much are you worried about Saros?
none. Like, truly none. I mean, I think the most telling name on that list that you just gave was Shesterkin. I mean,
Mhm.
one of the best goaltenders in the league, universally acknowledged. Now, I'm not saying that because they shared this one stat that Saros equals Igor Shesterkin, but the point being, the Rangers obviously had a down year this year. I picked them preseason to go to the Stanley Cup final. Clearly, that did not turn out very well. But I don't
Nothing
think
else
anyone.
did this season either. Just so you know, nothing else turned out well for us either.
Nope. We don't get nice things. But
Nope.
no one is looking at the Rangers this year and saying, you know what the problem was? It was
Thank
Igor
you.
Shesterkin. No one is
Thank
saying
you.
that. And yes, of course, when the rest of the team suffers, the goalie is going to suffer as a result. And I just think, again, for as many times as as Saros has dragged this team into the fight and stolen games for them, people are so quick to, as soon as something goes wrong, well, it's his fault. Well, he's not legit. He can't
Yeah.
win in the playoffs. He's too small, whatever thing, because people are lazy and they want something or someone to blame. And it's easy to pick the guy who's the last line of defense against the puck. And you know what? I am by no means am I saying lay off of Saros. He's never done anything wrong ever and never will do anything wrong ever. Has he laid some eggs this year? Yeah. He had some bad games, but you know what? Do you all never have a bad day at work? I mean, come on. I'm I'm just saying, I think that it's you fans need to let him have a bad game, a bad year,
Mhm.
a bad season, and not let him and not, catastrophize about it, because I
Yeah.
feel like that's what's happening. And again, it's like, okay, it took him how long, how many years in the NHL before he had one bad year? Okay, I think we can allow him that. It is unfortunate that that year coincided with the same year that everyone else had a terrible year, but we can't
Nobody was
control
great.
that. No.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I think it's very interesting that people are pointing at UC Saros as being the weak link for this team. Coming up, I'm going to share a stat with you that may help you understand that it's not all Saros's fault. We're also going to talk about that contract that's kicking in. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. If you are looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, friends, you need to crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I personally am a no shells variety kind of girl. It is a perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether you are snacking at your desk or you are running around in your car running errands, or you just hit the point where you know you need a quick protein boost, these are a great go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, Emma, we are talking about Juuse Saros, and here is a stat that I think is important. And again, you don't want to look at stats in a vacuum, but each one helps put a puzzle piece together. And this is a stat that I think is very interesting. In all situations, 5-on-5, power play, penalty kill, Nashville finished the regular season 30th in defensive zone giveaways in all situations. I don't care if Juuse Saros is your goaltender or Kimmel, who can't skate backward and has a bad hip, is your goaltender. That is tough because immediately you put Saros in a position where he is probably going to have to make a high danger save. He's going to have to make a save shorthanded. And this is something that I think people need to be aware of. We talk so much about the system and how, defensemen have to adjust to the system and the forwards have to get on the same page with the system. But we forget that the system in front of him affects Saros. And part of that is, exit the defensive zone quickly and get the puck up ice. If you don't do that well, he is hung out like Amish laundry. And I think we have to remember that until this team gets comfortable executing this system really well, which we never saw happen in 82 games last season, Juuse Saros is going to be put in a pickle, a hockey pickle, my friends.
And, you're right that it changes a change in the system. It changes the way the goalie sees the game playing out in front of them. I actually remember talking to life coach Kevin Lingan about this last year when Andrew Brunette, it was his first season and a lot of people were talking about the system. That was, when they eventually did get it together in like February.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was
Won
fun.
games.
Yeah, when they won 18 of them in a row. Yeah, it was 84 years ago, but I remember talking to Kevin Lingan about this, and that's what he said is it changes the way you see plays unfold in front of you. It's the same thing that we talk about. How many times have we talked about this year with guys passing, they're passing the puck and it looks like they have no idea who they're passing to. They don't know where anyone is or where they're supposed to be or when they're going to be there. And it's that's the same thing for the goalie, except instead of passing, it's well, who's going to be blocking the shots? Who's going to be screening? Who's going to be doing all of this stuff? So I think that there's definitely something to that. And when the entire team struggles, like you said, I don't care who your goaltender is. When you have that many D-zone giveaways,
oof, that's
you're
asking
going
above and beyond.
Oh, yeah. And this is a team that has already asked above and beyond of Juuse Saros for years. So you know what? I am perfectly okay. I'm not sitting here and saying, you guys, it wasn't that bad. I think he had a great year. No, of course he didn't. But I think he's earned a bad year after what he's had to do.
Yeah. We were chatting with our Locked On Predators insiders about Juuse Saros, and I thought they had some really interesting points. what we're talking about here, one of our insiders said the defense and the players in front of him changed so much over the course of the season that he was left on an island. The only minor concern is that his 2 worst seasons are under Bruno. So this scheme may just not play to his strengths. And I think that's something to keep an eye on. Could that be coincidence? Maybe. Is that something to keep an eye on when the season kicks off? Definitely. And when Trotz has addressed the defense, you gotta, if you have a defense put together in front of Saros and he's still struggling, then we got to dig a little bit deeper. But friends, I think that is point W and we're on point A right now. Another great comment from one of our insiders, and I think this is so true, and we've talked about this. Goalies are fascinating and horrifying to me. I don't know how they do what they do. But this insider said, I don't think Saros's trajectory to improvement is physical. His skills and ability are proven. Rather, it's emotional and mental. He's always slow to warm up in a new season, but was less so this year. But then in some games, he fell apart when he absolutely should not have. I'm guessing that it was partly frustration at the team in front of him and partly self-flagellation. But he's a Finn a few words, so we'll probably never know. Let's just hope this summer he can work on his mental game to handle whatever 2025-26 delivers. And I think that's a very fair point. Here is what I will say about Juuse Saros. He is the player who should have walked in that locker room and dropped all of the FCC non-compliant words and pointed a finger. And he is the player least likely to ever do that. He will just never do that. That's just not who he is. But I do agree that, I felt like it was at times more of a mental challenge for Saros than it was a physical challenge for him this season.
Yeah, I would say this is the most visibly frustrated I've ever seen him. And I don't necessarily mean frustrated at his teammates or frustrated at himself, frustrated about the way the game is going. It could be any combination of those things as far as what he's frustrated about. But this was the most that we saw that from him because he is as you said, a Finn of few words. He's also a Finn of he's very I don't know what the word is, like subdued in his emotions.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't let the emotions get the best of him. He's got a really good poker face. And so his poker face slipped a little bit this year.
Mm-hmm.
And like you saw him arguing with officials. Nothing crazy. He wasn't going all, Jordan Bennington trying to fight people, but for him, that's, this was a lot. And so I do think that, for so many years, Nashville has been goalie and defense oriented. That's been their style. And that changed so drastically under Brunette, which is why I think that it does that mean that the system is bad for Saros? No. But I think it means that it takes some time. Like it's going to take some time. There are going to be some growing pains. Lord knows we had plenty of them this year.
Oh my gosh.
But I think that he is, there's a huge mental component to that as far as adjusting and kind of building your confidence back a little bit.
Yeah. Talk about growing pains, man. Juuse Saros should start the season next year at 6'11" for all the growing pains that goaltender had to go through. And then it would be fun to talk about his size in the other way, but I digress. Another insider had an observation, and this is something that I don't know that I have the advanced stats to quantify, but that my eye test agrees with. And that is that it seems like Saros gets beat high more often than some of the bigger goaltenders. Here's the upside of that. They have a goaltending coaching staff that will be able to identify that and work on that. Another insider pointed out, look, it's very hard to be a really great goaltender who wins games for your teams when your team is losing 2-1 or 1-0. When he does not have goal support, you are literally asking him to do everything. Everything. And he has to be perfect with the way the offense played last season. Saros had to be near perfect if that team was going to be in a playoff conversation. No offense.
I once again am going to make a baseball analogy here because I am who I am. But it's like in baseball right now, you look at a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates, for example. They have honestly a great starting pitching staff. They have one of the best pitchers in the world in Paul Skeens. He has I think a 2.3 ERA through the month of May, which is very, very good if you don't know baseball and don't know what the stats are. 2.3 ERA, very good through 5 starts in the month of May. He still doesn't have a win in the month of May. Why? Because no one can hit on that team.
Yeah.
So he's doing everything in his control that he can. But then you're still getting the same kind of narrative. People are talking about Saros like in the same way. It's like, oh, Skeens is struggling. He's having a down year. Well, yeah, because the whole team is having a down year. So of course he's going to be affected by that. And so it's not exactly the same, but it is, similar in the sense that you're going to be like, well, you wouldn't ask a pitcher to hit. I mean, not anymore because DH is a thing now, but I mean, the goalie can't do everything. A really good goalie can steal you some games, and he's going to have to, but he does not need to be stealing you every single game, and he shouldn't be. And I think what we're realizing is for so many years, Juuse Saros stole a lot of games, like more than he should have for this team. Now that he's not stealing games at this otherworldly level, people are like, oh, he's bad now. It's like, no, actually the rest of the team is bad. And because he is being a mere mortal, everyone is like, oh, it's his problem. It's his fault. He's the problem. And that's just not realistic.
There's another reason why I think Juuse Saros is getting so much heat right now. Coming up, I'm going to tell you about that. We're also going to talk about Justus Annunen and this goaltending duo together. All right, Emma, we're talking about people ripping on Juuse Saros, who we agree did not have a stellar season. But our concern level for Juuse Saros is pretty darn low when it comes to this. Here is one of the reasons why I think people are squawking about Juuse Saros. It's because his contract's kicking in. 100%. And people are like, oh, squawkamole. They are squawkamole about Juuse Saros' contract, 7.74 million AAV. Dear friends, that is going to be a bargain. And you are going to get more goaltending bang for your buck than many other teams across the league, and he's gonna be fine. So when you hear somebody balking about Juuse Saros, it's probably because they're mad about the money. If you think you are going to get yourself a Vezina finalist goaltender for under $7 million, I don't know where you're shopping. Is it Ollie's Outlet Barn? Is that where you're going to pick up your goaltender? This is a steal of a contract, and people are squawking because he had a down year and the contract's kicking in. And I'm just telling you right now, he's going to be worth every penny.
It's going to be such a steal when the cap goes up.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it is
Pittance,
like,
friends.
oh my goodness. People are so impatient. Like, oh my God. You remember earlier this year? Because technically this was the last year of his old contract and the new one kicks in. People were saying, oh, trade him now before the new contract kicks in. Like, first of all, you think anyone's trying to take on a 7-year contract in a trade? A mid-season trade? Absolutely not. Like, what are you smoking if you think that that's happening? I don't know what people are thinking. I think if you're complaining and you're thinking that Juuse Saros is the biggest problem with this team or that he makes too much money, then I can only conclude that you have not watched the games this year, because the simple eye test would tell you that's not true.
Yes. Yeah. Some people would kick if they had both legs cut off. My grandfather used to say that, and that's very true of some people in sports. Now, the backup goaltending situation, friends, we did not dance with the guy who brought us. Let's just be real. Do you remember, Emma? And I know, because I was thinking about this prepping for this episode. I'm like, wait, was that real? Do you remember Scott Wedgwood?
The Scott Wedgwood fever dream that lasted for like 5 minutes before he got traded. That was wild.
Yes, just he was here and then he was gone. But in return, the Nashville Predators got Justus Annunen. He played 23 games. He had a 3.17 goals against average, an 888 save percentage. Did not record a shutout this season. Here's an interesting stat. He played 1,269 minutes of ice time, which is by far the most of his NHL career. And I think that's really interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, it shows you that there is something here in this player that I think the Nashville Predators like and feel comfortable going, hey, if Saros doesn't have it tonight, I mean, obviously you got to put him in or you got to go e-bug. But I think that they liked what they saw from him. I also think the potential for Justus Annunen as a backup goaltender is a very good deal for the Nashville Predators, just financially, but also execution. Again, the numbers aren't fantastic, but maybe the numbers aren't fantastic for Justus Annunen for the same reason that they were not necessarily fantastic for Juuse Saros. And it's not just that they suck at goaltending. It could be other factors when both of your goaltenders are struggling.
Yeah, and I think Annunen too, this was a better situation for him, coming from Colorado, where their goaltending situation was so precarious and they were in win now mode, and he is not really a win now goalie just because he's young and he's, he needs a little bit more time to develop. I think that fits in better behind. They don't need him to be the guy in Nashville because Juuse Saros is the guy. And so he can learn, he can develop. He still, doesn't there's not as much pressure. He's making less than $1 million a year. Like, come on. We love that. We love that in a backup goalie. And I think that, a lot of people were upset and still are about the Askarov situation. But here's the deal. I'm a lot more comfortable. I'll be honest. I'm a lot more comfortable with Justus Annunen in net in an NHL game right now than I am with Yaroslav Askarov. Got it right.
I take a lot less Tums. Like, full disclosure, I take a lot less Tums with Justus Annunen as the backup. And I like what we saw from him. He's young, like you said. I think the one thing we know is Nashville knows how to develop good goaltenders. And I think this is a great opportunity for him. I would like to see split starts, not 50-50. Look, we are not at a 50-50. Juuse Saros is not a 1A, he's a 1. And Justus Annunen is a backup, but I think he has the potential to be a very good backup for this team. So when it comes to goaltending, when I look at Nashville in and of itself, I don't feel as concerned about that. That is so far down my list of concerns of things that are going to just be terrible again this season compared to a lot of other things. But we go back to the Central Division. And here's what you need. You need something to be an X factor. And you have said this on this episode, like, Nashville is used to goaltending being the X factor. Look around the Central Division at the goaltenders. Colorado, they've got the Lumberyard. I swear they went after Wedgwood just because the name worked with Blackwood. But kudos to them. The Lumberyard, chef's kiss. You've got Ottinger in Dallas. You've got Hellebuck in Winnipeg. Philip Gustafson was phenomenal for Minnesota. You've got Jordan Binnington. Nashville needs their goaltending duo to be an X factor in this Central Division. And it's tough because the goaltending situation in the Central is very good.
And I would even throw in addition to that, like all the names that you just mentioned, you've got Karl Vejmelka in Utah, who is
That's true. Yep.
phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
And Chicago, even they traded up and they got Spencer Knight. That's going to
Yeah.
be massive for them. Massive. And so I think that other teams, the teams that maybe like Chicago didn't, quite measure up in the goaltending category, they're looking around, they're saying, okay, well, we should probably do something about that. And they did. And so Nashville is in a position where they have the goaltending. They have the X factor. It's capable of being the X factor, but they can't, as we've said, they can't do everything. They can't do it all. The team's got to play well in front of them too.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how adjustments and how free agency affects the defense in front of them. When you look at Juuse Saros and when you look at Justus Annunen, obviously Saros, the 7-year contract is kicking in. He is a long-term piece for the Predators. What do you see for Justus Annunen? He's going to be an RFA after the 2026-27 season, or in for the 2026-27 season. Is he a long-term piece, do you think, for the Nashville Predators?
I think he can be, but I don't think he needs to be. So I think the issue with the whole Askarov situation was that his timeline did not align well with Saros's timeline. It just didn't. And that doesn't, it is what it is. It happens. You take the L on that one. I think Annunen, as a backup, is in a really good situation right now. And he has, next season, he had this past season, and then he has this coming season where he can, kind of prove himself and develop and do what he can to show that he should be a long-term piece in Nashville, or that he can be. But if he doesn't, again, it's not that big of a deal because I'm looking at, the draft coming up. Jeff Kelty said that they're going to be looking to take a goalie or two. I've seen multiple mock drafts that have Joshua Ravensbergen going to Nashville at 25 or 26 or whatever their picks in the 20s are in the first round. I mean, he is far and away the top goaltender in the class this year. I think if you get him, his timeline, in theory, aligns much better with that of Juuse Saros, where Saros is going to be kind of on his way out as Ravensbergen were to come in. It could be a Pekka Juuse situation again. If now maybe Annunen plays out of his mind for the next couple years. He's only 24. So it's like maybe he plays out of his mind and they say, oh, actually, he's our guy. He's our next guy. Great. Then you get him locked up to an extension. If he's not, oh, well, he's an RFA. You can trade his rights. Everyone's looking for good goaltending.
Right.
I just think that it gives them a lot more flexibility having him there. He can be a long-term piece. He can be a trade chip. He can be a short-term piece where maybe, hey, we're not, you're an RFA. We're not looking to sign you long-term, but how's a 2-year bridge deal sound? And, there's a lot of options that you have with him that you didn't have with Yaroslav Askarov. And it buys you more time. It's a better situation for Saros. It's a better situation for, in this hypothetical situation, Ravensbergen, where everyone's kind of on timelines that align better with each other.
Yeah. And I think the key point is no matter what you do with Justus Annunen, he's going to have value for the Predators, whether it is playing in net, whether it is, like you said, a 2 to 3 year kind of covering the bridge. If they draft a goaltender, that's going to be valuable for him, whether it is as a trade chip. This is a guy who's going to have value for the Nashville Predators at some point. And I love what we saw from him last season. So for me, I think goaltending, despite the numbers, I really think Nashville is okay. but they have a lot they need to do around the goaltending. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the defensemen. We're going to be talking about the forwards and what we need to see from this roster that didn't go great this past year that needs to improve next year. So let us know in the comments, do you think Nashville is in a good place with goaltending? Do you think this contract for Juuse Saros is the right move going forward? Let us know. You can, of course, drop us a comment in the YouTube video. You can find us on social media at LO_Predators as well, and let us know what you think about the goaltending. Emma, before we log off today, let everyone know where they can find you and where they can find your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at ANK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We hope you guys have a fabulous day. We will be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.